I'm almost short of words, but let's go. Right from day one, when Canada announced the new immigration minister, there has been indications that everything was not well and there may need to be changes to the Canada International Student Program. International students were struggling with accommodation, living expenses, and actually were being exploited by certain schools in Canada. And based on this, in December 2023, some announcements were made to make certain changes to the Canada International Student Program, with a promise that more announcements will be coming soon. Those new announcements have now been made by the immigration minister, and they have announced some major, and when I say major, they are major changes to the Canada International Student Program. In fact, the Canada International Student Program is not the same. It is completely different, and I definitely did not expect some of these changes. I'm going to talk about what those changes are, and I'm going to give my opinion and ask all of you for your own opinion as well. Since the last announcement was made in December 2023, I have been saying that there are likely to be huge changes in the Canada International Student Program, and those huge changes are here. In fact, when they started hinting that there will be caps in the number of international students, and the minister was saying that it was something they were just thinking about, I suspected that it was already a done deal, but they were just trying to wet the ground, so to say, and get us ready for when they will actually make the announcement, which has finally happened. But before we go on, let me tell us what those changes are. You may have already heard about them, but I'll just give a brief summary right here. The Honorable Mark Miller, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, announced today, January 22nd, that the Government of Canada will set a temporary 2-year intake cap on international student permit applications. For 2024, the cap has been set at approximately 360,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. So I think that means that in 2024, we will see a lot more study visa refusals, not because the prospective students have not met the eligibility, but just because the visa officers are trying to keep to the allowed number of students that they can grant study visas. And I'm just wondering how this is going to play out. It becomes a game of chance, doesn't it? And I think one of the ways to beat this is to actually submit your study visa application on time, and also to ensure that your application meets all the eligibility requirements. Also, in the spirit of fairness, individual provinces and territorial caps have also been established based on their population, which will result in much more significant decreases in number of study permits for provinces where the international student population has seen the most unsustainable growth, meaning that those provinces which usually get the most number of international students are going to be the ones that will be the most hit. If you can guess which provinces those ones are, leave it in the comments below. It is important to state that study permit renewals will not be impacted by these caps, and those pursuing masters and doctorates, as well as elementary and secondary education, are not included in this cap. Since IRCC will allocate a portion of the cap to each province, the provinces will then distribute their allocation among their designated learning institutions. And to implement the cap as of January 22, 2024, every study permit application submitted to IRCC will also require an attestation letter from a province or a territory. Provinces and territory are expected to establish a process for issuing these attestation letters to students by not later than March 31st of 2024. It makes me wonder how this policy of attestation letter is immediate, and provinces do not have a process for issuing these letters. I think there's a gap there, which the minister should have addressed. The number of new study permit applications that will be accepted in 2025 will be reassessed at the end of this year. There's also been some changes to the post-graduation work permit. And this is the one that has actually pained me the most, because this one is so unexpected, and in a way, I feel that it is unfair. So starting September 1, 2024, post-graduation work permits will no longer be available to public-private institution models, for which Ontario is very popular for. Also, in the weeks ahead, open work permits will only be available to spouses of international students in master's and doctoral programs, as well as those in professional programs like medicine and law. I am not sure if this medicine is for all health programs, because Canada does not really offer medicine programs, but I'm hoping this will be clarified as we go. The spouses of international students in other levels of study, including undergraduate and college programs, will no longer be eligible. Even though this wasn't specifically spelled out, I think that college programs also include those who are studying for graduate certificates, which normally would have been on the same level as a master's program, but it's not actually a master's program. Personally, I would prefer if these distinctions are usually clear in RCC announcements, but they leave certain things for us to figure out ourselves. So what I'm reading here is that if you graduated from a college program or any other program apart from a master's and a PhD as of September 2024, you will no longer be available for postgraduate work permits. So I'm wondering what happens to all the students who are already here in Canada studying in a college. There are much more students studying for programs other than Masters and PhD in Canada. In fact, I would think that the ratio will be 70 to 30, but it seems that Canada just wants only those in Masters and PhD programs. I want to believe that the minister will make another announcement to clarify this so that people don't lose their minds thinking about how this affects them if they are doing a graduate certificate. I don't know what you guys think, but this one is sad. This one is hugely unfair and just looks like they are just following the steps of what the UK just did recently. Anyway, let's move on. The Honorable Minister has said that these temporary policies just aim to ensure that genuine students receive the support that they require and have the resources that they need for an enriching study experience in Canada, while at the same time stabilizing the overall number of students arriving and also alleviating pressures on housing, on healthcare, and on other services in Canada. But the question is, has Canada played their best card in this regard? I don't know. This is not good news. I'm very emotional right now. I feel that there are other things that could have been done to aid international students rather than these sort of harsh policies, in my opinion. I know there are many intending international students who have been working hard to put their proof of funds together for themselves and for their families. And now this is coming so shortly after the last announcement that was made in December 2023. So as for whether this is the best thing for Canada, I guess we will see. That's the best answer I can give, because that is also the answer that the minister gave when he was asked by the journalist when he was making the announcement. I agree that it is true that some institutions in Canada have significantly increased their intakes to drive revenues, and more students have been arriving in Canada without the proper support they need to succeed as international students. These rapid increases in the number of international students arriving in Canada also puts pressure on housing, on healthcare, and on other services. I agree. And I agree that the cost of living in certain provinces have continued to increase, including the cost of housing. But I would have thought that Canada would be working hard to increase the number of houses generally and to increase healthcare and other services rather than limit the number of international students coming to study in Canada. Because the number of these international students is not high enough to make any dent in the number of housing and living expenses just because you capped them. This might be a case of putting your head in the sand just to avoid the real issues. But what do I know? What do you think, guys, of these policies? Do you think that this will maybe dissuade people from coming to Canada to study? And do you also think that this is the best that the Canadian government could have done? I mean, if you were the Minister of Immigration in Canada, what would you have done apart from these that they've done? Leave your comments and let's discuss. I am one of those who has always been prompting people to apply for study permits on time, because policies in Canada change, especially immigration policies. They change often. And since the last policy, I have been prompting people, knowing that policies will change, but there's no how anybody could have been ready for these policy changes that have just been announced. Still, I want to encourage you that if you have a dream to move to Canada to study, don't give up on that dream yet. Nobody knows how things will shape up in the future, but we're hoping that things will be looking forward from here on. I will keep my ears on the ground for any new announcements concerning this, and I will be the first to come share with you guys. This is also the time to be looking at other options to move to Canada apart from study, including express entry and actually getting a job and a work permit to Canada. And I'm going to encourage you to please explore these other options. And I'm going to be leaving 2 videos up here, one for the express entry and one for getting a job and a work permit in Canada, so you can start exploring these as well. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I wish you the very best of the day and the rest of the week as well. Take care and peace.